Hello, my crafty friend, and thank you so much for tuning into today's junk journal flip through video. I made a little book this week using some of my absolute favorite pieces of Victorian ephemera. You've probably seen me use these little bits printed in all kinds of my journals, and the originals to all of them are in my personal travel journal. I call it a travel journal just because it's little and portable. But it mainly lives as an ornament on my dresser. But anyway, I thought instead of just hoarding the beauty of all my favorite Victorian scrapbook ephemera pieces, why not make them into a journal inspired by my personal favorites journal? And then also have each of the ephemera pieces professionally scanned so that they can be printed out in high resolution and used as printable digital ephemera. Actually, I'll show you these at the end. I don't want to kind of spoil the surprise of what all I've put in this book. Before I open it though, I just want to say how adorable is this? My boyfriend makes the coolest energy tools by taking naturally fallen wood and then spiraling around the wooden pieces with copper. This one is kind of like a fancy silver colored copper. And then he always caps them with crystals, and he started wrapping the ends with fabrics. They're just so much fun. It feels like the kind of wand a fairy godmother might carry. So I had to share that with you because after I set up my little area for filming today, I walked over and saw that he had laid that new wand across my display area. So worth sharing. I'll tell you more about him and his wand creations in future videos, but for now I am just so excited to share this little cutie with you. The cover of the book is made up of two beautiful prints that my talented and beautiful friend Kat Stone sent me with some happy mail. And from there, it just kind of evolved with shades of blue, green, and gold. And I just love how this one turned out. So I changed things up a little bit compared to how you typically see boho journals or junk journals oriented and laid out, but I kind of like the quirkiness of the new sort of asymmetrical style. So instead of the traditional method of putting the tassel on the top left-hand corner, I put a removable tassel added to a vintage silver and gold kind of basket weave clip-on earring. And you could technically clip it to the top if you wanted to, but I think it just looks so cute at the closure. The closure is made out of a piece of thrifted yarn that I kind of tied some pretty blue fabric to at the end and then dangled a vintage crystal earring. So you could take that off and use it elsewhere, but I think it looks really good with the other shades of blue and gold on the cover. That closure kind of wraps around and it's attached behind this flip piece. So this first flip, like I said, it's a bird that Kat Stone sent me, and I've framed it with gold sari trim pieces and some fussy cut floral elements. And when you flip it over, ta-da! This piece of yarn actually doubles as a netted belly band pocket. So inside that pocket, I've stuck 3 prints of adorable little Victorian angel cards. So the originals were advertisement cards for a shoe company, of all things. But the little angels on the front say, "He loves me a little." And then this little angel who says, "He loves me not at all." And notice the little flowers in the background. So it's a play on that game little girls play with daisies, pulling off the petals. He loves me not, he loves me not. But they're just so adorable. And wait, was it Novelty, Beauty, and Fashion? Yeah, the back of these had a shoe advertisement thing, but they were in bad shape. So I've left them blank and then kind of roughed up with some ink so they could be used as journaling cards. But don't they look just precious with a little bit of gold acrylic paint to give them some sparkle? So those sit in here. And then this piece of sari fabric flips up as well to reveal this beautiful peacock illustration by Kat. And I've kind of roughed up the edges and inked them to make it look a little bit older. And then to make the cover, I actually took pieces of vintage and antique book pages and tore them into strips and then just kind of glued them to attach the peacock illustration to a vintage postcard. So I think it turned out really pretty. I matched genuine old postage stamps to the colors in the illustration. So the pink on the stamp here is the same pink that's in the flower and the stripe here. The kind of turquoise and green we see in the peacock's feathers. And then of course the blue on the top is the same as the blue in that beautiful background. I'll reinforce this with a little bit of extra lace glued on just because I've noticed it's kind of tearing a bit there. But I just love the way this cover turned out. There's nothing like layers of opulent textiles mixed with vintage papers and things to make us crafty girls excited, right? So inside, this is the first double page spread. And I would call this a mini journal just because it doesn't have as many pages as most of my books do. And that's because instead of binding it with a stitched signature, I actually took old book pages and glued them all together. So this is actually more like an altered book or a glue book, if you want to be specific. But I just kind of call all of them junk journals because why not? So on the inside front cover, I decorated the background space with these old postage stamps. I kind of went through my stash and tried to pick ones that looked pretty. So we have a lot of flowers and birds and beautiful architecture. And this one shows Princess Diana, of course, on her wedding day. And when I was going through my costume jewelry rings to decide which ring to wear for the video and to give as a gift with purchase to whoever buys this journal, it just so happens that I have one of the costume jewelry rings that were all the rage back in the 80s and the 90s, because of course everyone wanted to pay tribute to Princess Diana. So maybe she's special to you. Maybe you've always kind of been inspired by her altruism and her love for people. Maybe that's a little sign for you. But I do think it's just kind of pretty to see the look of a sapphire. Very mystical, blue gemstones. So anyhow, the pocket is a piece that I took from an art history textbook. It shows the temple of Artemis. So beautiful tribute to a goddess. I like to include at least a nod to the goddess in every journal in some form or another. So there we have it. And then this little envelope was a printable by the Paper Cameo. And I've just kind of added to it with a torn piece out of a vintage magazine that says Plant Roses with a cute little polymer clay gilded image of two little cherubs kissing surrounded by roses. And my boyfriend mass made a bunch of these one day. So I've got quite a little stash to play with and I love that. And inside this envelope, we have one of the other printable pieces. So this is such a cute little piece of Victorian ephemera. I was so happy when I was able to salvage it from a crumbling Victorian scrapbook. I've left it blank on the back so it could easily be glued down somewhere. Maybe used as a tuck spot or to decorate a page, or maybe you want him to just live in this little envelope. But I really love the scrapbook pieces that are fussy cut, so not just a rectangular or a square card shape, but that have the look of dimension to them. Like that little birdie with a spool of thread and like these two little flower vases. So if you're a regular viewer of mine, I'm sure you've seen these in my other videos because I tend to use them a lot. These ones have a little bit of water damage because I spilled a little water on the sheets of paper after I finished printing. But I've left them as is because what I really like to do when I use this particular print is mimic the Japanese art of kintsugi with the paper. and correct me if I'm pronouncing that wrong, but kitsungi is the art of repairing broken pottery using gold. And the beautiful moral of the story to the Japanese, or their artistic purpose behind the kitsungi, is that in life we strive to perfect everything we do. If we have a painting, we want it to look photorealistic, if we're that kind of an artist. Or typically bookmakers would want all the pages in their spine to align perfectly, and we don't always achieve that kind of perfection. And so by highlighting their so-called mistakes in gold, rather than trying to hide, cover up, smooth over, gloss over, or deny the fact that they have any imperfections, by kind of highlighting the imperfections and making the imperfections the standout feature in their pieces of pottery, the Japanese are teaching us the moral that it's the things that are unique about us, that might be quirky, might be imperfect, that make us special and make us who we are. And that rather than try to hide the damage done to us in our past or cover up and smooth over the things that we think might not be palatable to others, we can accentuate those and play with them and make that a part of our special, unique expression in this world. So whenever I do these particular printables, I like to tear them in a different place each time, somewhere along the vase. And then instead of gluing the paper back together, I use gold paint to kind of reseal it. So it's kind of like kitsungi in paper form, or at least my tribute to kitsungi in paper form. And just aesthetically alone, I love the way this page came together with the floral postage stamps and the floral envelope, and then the flowers from Victorian times sticking out the top. I just really like that. On the next page, so I've kind of covered over the crumbling old book paper that I've used as the backing pages here with some really pretty vintage wrapping paper in this blue tiled pattern. And then I made a little pocket on it using this paper that has kind of an Indian architectural top border with some ladies holding lotus flowers and some peacocks. All the blank space in here would be a great place to write your name, your intention, what you plan to do with this journal. So I've kind of hidden space to actually do your journaling throughout. You can journal on the backs of these as journaling cards. You can journal in the white spaces behind the arches and pillars here. And you can also journal on the back of this envelope, or kind of on the inside of the envelope, and even on the bottom here, because a lot of the prints are deliberately made quite light. And one day I'll have to show you one of my completed journals, because the way I write in my junk journals and in my regular journals, which wind up looking like junk journals because I stick all kinds of stuff in them, I like to write in all the white spaces. And if you challenge yourself to write in a confined area instead of just a rectangular square box of a page, you can really get some points out in a way that's more punchy, like just a few impactful words rather than lots and lots of text. And if you're like me and you're kind of a procrastinator or more of a lazy journaler, it's so much less daunting to sit down and write in your journal if you know that today, for example, you only have to fill up this little space as opposed to a whole page. So I think that's the appeal of junk journals to a lot of us. Anyway, this really cool piece of crumply paper is part of a roll of piano paper. So player pianos had little gizmos or like little wheels that would read the music in these little holes. And it's probably a sweet little song written by a boy because it says there are girls next door. And I wonder what the next line would be. We may never know because I've ripped up that whole roll of piano paper and used it in journals, but it's fun to think about, right? So next to this, I've put some old bridge score sheets that I found at a local antique store in Fort Macleod. And you can tell it's really old because the phone number only has 4 digits. And also this gives you some great journaling space on the back. And in that same antique store, I also found this stunning postcard. So I've tried to do searches for paintings of women looking into fish bowls, and there are thousands of them out there, my friends. So I haven't been able to identify the artist who painted this image, but I've included it in my printable set because it was an antique store find, and based on the styles, it definitely looks flapper era. So maybe even the Edwardian era. So somewhere between the Victorian age of moderation and the jazz age of sheer dresses and such falls this beautiful, probably Art Nouveau era woman. And not only does she have just stunning emeralds in her necklace and the most intrigued expression on her face as she's watching the movements of those fish, but she also has a little bluebird of happiness right there painted on the screen behind her. And I do love to include a bluebird to bring a little happiness in every journal. Speaking of which, one of the other prints in that printable kit is this adorable little Victorian card showing a little robin, but because he has blue in his wings, I will go ahead and call him a bluebird of happiness. And behind that, just to kind of distress the paper, I added a little butterfly of washi tape and some ink and some gilding around the edges. And also the teeniest, tiniest little flower. My boyfriend picked a couple of these from our garden the other day, and I pressed one into my own journal and another into here, held it down with a little tiny bit of washi tape, just because I think it's so cool that we're in the middle of November and there are still wildflowers growing. So that's exciting. And then this, I don't know what it's even from. Some kind of piece of packaging. This may have been in the Happy Mail from Cat Stone, or I may have torn it off of something and set it aside before recycling the package. She tends to save the same sorts of things I do, but I thought that was the perfect size, shape, and color to complete this little page. Flipping it over, I've lined the next page with a really pretty modern origami paper mandala. Bordered that with this really cool Dresden cardboard cutout in gold. There's your little writing space right there. You could also use this as a backdrop for collaging. So if you want to stick down some plain paper and write on that, or stick down some Polaroids or photos or stickers or whatever, that would be a great space for it. And then this is just a little piece of packaging from an order I placed a few years ago from an Etsy shop out of France that sells cool French ephemera. So I like to save packaging and try to reuse everything that I can. Here's a page with some really cool fonts and graphic colors, black and red on white. And that's out of a vintage book about typing. And then this really fun postcard. It's a vintage Russian postcard that I found in the Fort Macleod thrift shop. The crescent moon here looks just like the moon looked last night. It's kind of cool when things like that happen in journals. It's like nature giving us a sign that we're putting the right little thing into our craft. So speaking of signs and goddesses, here's a piece that I chose from an art history book to use as a flip up. Really pretty, from the Acropolis Museum in Athens. So she's an ancient Greek goddess holding her water jug. And I've decorated her with these little bejeweled wheels that I cut out of some mesh sari fabric. And she flips up to reveal these little cute hinged pages that fold out. And I've attached, just with little paper clips, prints of more Victorian ephemera. This is one of my favorites. There's a little girl holding a dandelion, and her kitty is blowing the seeds away. And one of our cats, Buddha, did that for real recently in the backyard. Saw a dandelion gone to seed, attacked it, and I thought, how cute when dandelions grow. I'll know they came from Buddha. And that little kitty looks almost like him. And I love that it says, I love you, because as a cat lover, I do love all the cats. Another really pretty one. This one's a Victorian calling card. One of the most famous motifs in Victorian design is the hand holding a flower basket. And to the Victorians, seeing this on a card that you're given represents an extension of friendship. So the hand offering the flowers is like the hand offering friendship. And then I made hinges to hold these on. This is actually vintage paper too, I should mention. The graph paper here came from a little notebook that I found in the antique store. This little leaf piece is an offcut from another piece of the Victorian scrapbook design stuff, original, not printed. So that's actually a little printed piece of paper from the late 1800s. And then this cute little nabob tea coupon from, I believe, the 1960s. So yeah, you can't really cash it in for free tea in Vancouver any longer. But how cute is that? I think it's worth even more than the tea it would get you, especially because of that cute little genie logo. And then the background paper here is a piece that I found in a local antique store called Grandma's Antiques. And I don't know whether the writing is Chinese or Japanese, but it sure looks pretty. So, flipping the page over again. Another little Victorian girl holding a kitty. And I think this one's cute because if you look in the apron on her skirt, she's holding another kitten. And she has that look on her face, doesn't she? That us cat ladies get when we're holding kitties. So she flips down, and then behind her I've decorated the page with multiple strips of washi tape. So technically you could peel those off and use them on other crafts if you want to, but I do love the graphic look of just a collection of stripes of anything, whether it's fabrics or papers or washi tapes. And then behind that, I tried to create kind of like a folio spread. So each of these pages is a pocket page. The background paper is this really cool floral, very, very shiny kind of pearlescent basket weave wallpaper. And this was a really cool gift because I found it under the sink in my new art room, craft room, after moving in with my boyfriend. And so it's kind of like, yeah, free wallpaper with every move-in. And into that I've tucked a page out of a really cool accounting textbook from the 1930s. It has that beautiful thick feeling that old textbooks have, and just the most perfectly yellowed paper you could see in a junk journal. And I really I picked this page of all the pages because it's 108, which is the number of enlightenment. And it says journal waste book. And that's kind of like saying junk journal in other words, isn't it, right? We take our waste and we make it into a beautiful journal. Water damaged roll of wallpaper now becomes a beautiful folio, or, you know, an outdated book about accounting becomes a really cool piece of ephemera scrap. And along with that, I've tucked in prints of more Victorian calling cards that show the hands offering a flower basket. And these are all just blank on the other side, so perfect to write a little note to a pen pal or a little note to self or whatever you choose to do with them. The nice thing about having these in the digital printable kit is that you can print as many as you want. And I find that when I have something as a one-off piece, I'm a little bit more reluctant to use it because I want to use it in just the perfect project. But if I have something in a printable form, I can get so much more creative with how I glue it down, rip it up, add gold, you know, use half of it, glue it over something, cover it up, because there's no mistakes if you can always just reprint it and make another. So yeah, those look really cute there. In the pocket next to it, there's a full page out of a vintage music book. A little strip of tickets. So much fun to use in collages. and a little flower basket printed on cardstock. And so here's my hand holding a flower basket, just like the little hands in this card. So it's a little offering of friendship. Okay, this might be my favorite thing in this particular book. So it's from a different printable kit, not the printable kit of Victorian treasures, but it's a standalone kit in my Etsy shop called the Quan Yin Printable Mini Book. And it's a book that I ordered from Japan. So a Japanese antique book dealer sold me this. It's from the late Edo period, and it shows 7 different poses of the goddess Quan Yin, or not a goddess, sorry, the Bodhisattva Quan Yin. She's the Bodhisattva of compassion, and connecting with her through mantra, through picture, through meditation, through divine intention, it's believed to help us awaken the qualities of divine feminine, which are compassion, creativity, care for humanity, that kind of altruistic sense of spiritual drive over personal materialistic drive. And I kept the original for my personal big junk journal, the one that I call my hoarder journal, but I'm definitely going to start printing more and more and more copies. So I left this instead of sewing it, whoops. So it could have been kind of sewed along this line here, either hand stitched or machine sewed, or even held together with staples or something. But I've left it loose so I can show you just what it looks like when you print it out, because it prints with 2 of these on a page and then just kind of white around them. So if you cut it out like a strip and then fold it in the middle, it's not meant to be a book that you open this way. It's Japanese style. So these each become 1 page, so 4 leaves total, and you flip it this way. But I kind of like having surprise and hidden journaling spots in the journal, so by leaving it unbound, you now have all of this hidden space to write some secret journaling messages. And it looks like they're in a little mini book, but it's kind of like you have a secret place to write inside the pages. Isn't that kind of fun? And this is just an old bobby pin that I found in a junk jewelry jar. And then I glued a really pretty piece of embroidered and bejeweled fabric to it to make it look special. And then along with Quan Yin, I put a picture of Lourdes, which is of course the healing water grotto discovered by Saint Bernadette when she had a vision of Mother Mary. Very, very pretty spot. And then the back is a reproduction of the original back of the postcard. It's not a misprint, it actually was blurry like that. But this is also available in my shop as a standalone printable, a set of 3 antique Lourdes postcards. And I can't open it because I've glued it down, but it opens so that this part here is attached there, and you kind of fold it over. You can kind of see what I'm talking about where it's open here. So I mean, you could glue it down just there and there on the sides and make it into a floating pocket. I kind of wish I had done that, but I just took a glue stick and stuck the whole thing down. So it's kind of like a reproduced postcard. And of course I printed this just on regular printer paper, but it would be great to use as a book cover if you print it on cardstock. There's a lot we can do with printables. So turning it over, the next page is something that was kind of like a free gift with purchase. So when I ordered some French ledgers a couple of years ago, the beautiful shop owner I ordered it from actually glued an original French ledger from a boutique store that sells fancy fabrics, tulles, ardoises, etc. So it's Lacroix et Frères, so the Lacroix brothers. Ancienne Maison J. Moreau et Fils, so like the ancient fashion house of J. Moreau and Sons. It's just really beautiful, the penmanship. It's from 1915, so this is an original antique. And the reason it looks so rough and cracked and crumbled is that it actually traveled in the mail all the way from France to me in Canada. And so it got quite torn up, but I feel like the distressing just made it look better. So yeah, I glued this down and it just becomes a flip up. And then I added to it just a little bit of gilding wax and this adorable little yellow bird with flowers from my Victorian scrapbook. So this is another original Victorian piece. On the next page here, and tucked under this pocket, I've put a vintage book page that's quite thick and quite yellow, just to give a little bit of extra texture. And also the side that I cut off from the envelope that I made here. So, ta-da, there's my business address or my P.O. box address. So it's kind of a fun little thing. I didn't want to waste even this bit. So whoever buys the book, you could use, for example, the date stamp here that looks pretty cool for your collaging. It's just a nice piece of rough packaging paper. So these pockets are made from the same calling cards that are in my printable kit. I've stuffed them with pages out of an embroidery magazine from the 60s. Really fun to look at those old advertisements, isn't it? Female help wanted, $23 a week. No, thank you, right, girls? Yeah, it's funny what was considered a good living wage back then, isn't it? But yeah, it's just kind of fun. And when this flips up, you see all this journaling space on this pretty piece of stationery with pink lotuses, which represent enlightenment. And I have a really cool story about the fairy. So there's a place that my boyfriend and I call our tree. It's a little tree we used to walk to in the park near my old apartment. And we would regularly find cool stuff on our walks there. Like I found some really beautiful, heavily beaded embroidered lace just lying on the ground once. In a parking lot near there that he picked up for me, and we cleaned it up and I've used it in journals. Another time, right after I said that I would love to find a piece of beaded First Nations jewelry to send to my friend May in Saudi Arabia as a little example of the First Nations or the original culture of the land where I live. In that spot, he found exactly that, a bracelet made out of First Nations patterned seed beads. And so when we went there the other day for the first time since I moved in with him, I said at the beginning of our walk, like, I wonder what we're gonna find this time. And sure enough, what I found that time was a little plastic package of fussy cut fairies cut out of wallpaper trim. There were 6 of them in the package, so I put one of them in this journal. One of them is going into a journal I'm making for my friend Kat, and another one is going into a journal that I'm making for my friend May, and the rest of them I'm going to use to decorate my own journal. And so I think it's a very magical little fairy because, yeah, that spot never disappoints. I always find something that I can use in a journal when we go for walks there. So this fun little envelope, it's a reprint, or like a, it's, this was also in the Happy Mail from Kat. Just those cute little pen pal looking stationery envelopes. And I've stuffed it full of a bunch of stamps from my personal collection. How cool is this one? That would be, oh, why is his name escaping me right now? Van Gogh, the Vincent van Gogh, very famous painting of sunflowers. So I just grabbed a random handful. I didn't know that was in there. You're lucky, whoever gets it. But just some really beautiful stamps. And if you use a lot of printables in your journal art or in your crafting, or you use a lot of book pages or things like that, there's nothing like a good postage stamp with a pretty image to lend some authentic vintage vibes to your project without breaking the bank. They're just perfect for adding that pop of color. So here's an envelope from the 1970s, 1976. Look at the cool xylophones on it. in that I put a print of one of my favorite Victorian postcards. There's something beautiful but almost mournful about it too, like watching the ship sail away under the full moon with the hopeful flowers in the foreground. It's just one of those images that kind of takes you to the sea, kind of inked to look older and to use as a journaling card. And then this beautiful, almost Art Deco looking card. It's still Victorian, it's from the 1870s, but it has this really fascinating, almost architectural border that looks so Art Deco. That looks like it's straight out of a 1920s set design or something. Really, really cool. And then I think there's one more thing in here. Oh yeah, there is. Okay, so this is one of my favorite things from my new printable kit. It's a 3D Victorian calling card that shows a hand extending flowers, so the offer of friendship, but plus all of these doves on it. And the dove is a symbol of peace. So it's kind of like if you want to offer somebody a peace offering, or maybe symbolically send a little bit of peace into their life, sending a picture with doves would be a great way to do it. And a lot of times the Victorian calling cards would have these cool, interestingly edged white cardstock background papers with an image printed in color glued on top. And so I wondered, how could I do a printable version of that? And then I realized, duh, you just print two and then fussy cut the colorful part and glue it over top of itself on the backing. So that's how I've done this in the digital form. I'll just go ahead and show you, because this is one that I made from the digital, just in a reduced size. So if you cut out two of these, one around the border edge and then the other one fussy cut around the image, and then you take that one, glue it on that one, ta-da! You have what looks like a really authentic, genuinely antique, modern reproduction of a Victorian piece. I should also mention, like with the gift giving season coming up, if you have pen pals or crafty friends in the world and you want to give them a little something to brighten their day, an old vintage envelope stuffed with some items that you've printed and inked and made to look old for them to use in their crafts. That might be a really fun little project to do. Right? Like, wouldn't you rather get these than just, you know, a card with Santa on it or something? I know I would. Maybe I'll put this here because that looks really cool, and I'll put this one in there instead. The other fun thing about journals is things don't have to go back where they came from. You can kind of rearrange and redecorate as you see fit. This is the only page in the book that I've left predominantly blank. So lots of writing space if you want it, or lots of collaging space if you'd rather do it that way. It's made with some layers of different antique French books. This one is from 1912. This one, I'm not sure the date, but it's a very yellowed calculus textbook page. And right up here where the two pieces of fabric fold over, I've put a 1960s French fairy tale castle stamp. And how cool is this tiger fabric? That was also from Cat Stone. So thank you, Cat, for all the amazing things you've sent me. I just love them. We're almost at the back, my friend. So this pocket here I made from a print of one of my own original hand-drawn abstract black and white drawings. So I think of these as manifested meditations or stream of consciousness, getting in the flow state, sort of channeled art or automatic drawing. I love to take a black pen on a white page and just allow whatever wants to be expressed to express. So that's where this kind of art comes from. But I coffee dyed the page I printed it on and made it look a little bit grungy so it fits the junk journal aesthetic. Made that into a pocket. I glued this page from an art history textbook under it to strengthen the backing page, and then made a little flip out of this adorable, adorable advertisement from that 1960s crafters catalog. So look at this. How adorable is the illustration of that oil lamp? So cute. And then on the other side, make big money making costume jewelry at home. And I'm sure if you're into junk journals, you've seen earrings that look just like these with the little rhinestones or the little punched edged metal flower petals. So it's funny that those were not mass produced, interestingly enough, but back in the 60s, I guess ladies would order in and get kind of like Mary Maxim catalogs today, but get little craft kits to make their own costume jewelry. Very interesting. I love cottage industries and just learning about different ways people have made money at home. So in that pocket, I've tucked another one of these beautiful Victorian ships sailing into the full moon prints. And then this one I've done a little cluster of fabrics over it. So these are both fabrics, scraps of fabrics that were given to me by May from Saudi Arabia. And then on top, just a little beaded sari detail for some texture. On this side, I've kind of paper clipped into place a sample of sheer blue sari fabric, and then added a cute little house stamp from Japan. This is an original stamp. I love it so much. I almost kept it for my own personal collection, but I'm kind of challenging myself to use some of my favorite things to spread the wealth. So there you go. It's so cute though, that little house with the 3 little bluebirds. And what I love about it is the birdie in the front is carrying a letter. So it's like a little happy mail, happy stamp. Isn't it sweet? And in that pocket, I've added a gorgeous print of Kat Stone's art. She drew this beautiful woman in a ball gown. And what I love the most about this one, of course, is the beautiful white kitty on a cushion at her feet. So you have that as a journaling card. Such good vibes are in Kat's art. Martina, whose channel is called Magnolia Fairy Tale, she yesterday published a video flipping through the swap journal I made for her. And I love something she said at the beginning, that when you hold a junk journal that somebody's made, you can feel the energy of that artist, because we all put a little bit of ourselves into the art we make. And that's why I love adding prints of Kat Stone's art in my journals too, because even though it's a print, it was printed by her and cut out by her. So a bit of the artist's hand is in this print. And okay, so annoyingly, my camera ran out of storage space right when I was about to flip it to the last page. So I'm going to try to quickly wrap this up. There was an envelope folded over the side of this page here. I decorated it with a piece from a crochet magazine from the 1960s, overlaid with this pretty blue mesh that's attached beneath a washed out, watery image of a mermaid sitting on the seashore with a cityscape in the background and these little seashells. I just love that vintage illustration. And inside the envelope, I put a piece of this, not quite onion skin, but thinner than usual paper, blank ledger. Really great as a writing space or as a backdrop for collages, or like a little torn piece of that could very nicely be added to a collage for that pop of yellow. That folds over here. The back of this page is one of my favorite scrapbook paper prints of all time. It's from a pack called, not Asian Opulence, Oriental Opulence is what they called this paper pack. And it's shades of beautiful pinks, blues, and purples punched up with golds and these kind of jewelly, stained glass windowy mandala sort of flower patterns. Really, really pretty. And then the back of this old postcard from Russia has, pardon me for clearing my throat, I think we're getting a little cold. Knock on wood, hopefully we don't. But this really beautiful Victorian postcard print of a woman dressed up in her gladiator sandals and her Romanesque outfit, holding yet another beautiful bluebird of happiness. And this is another of the items in my new printable kit. Behind that pocket, I've included a sample of 1928 Sears wallpaper, just as one last little genuine antique piece. And I wanted to point out, I picked mostly blank book pages to be these hinges, but this one here has one of the chapter titles, which is The Young Artist. And I feel like no matter how old we are chronologically, no matter how many years we've been alive in this lifetime, if we're doing something that's new to us, or if we're constantly looking to innovate, add to, or improve our gift, then we are always in some way a young artist. And so this book is made for the young artist in all of us. Like I said, the reproduction costume jewelry Princess Diana ring will be the gift with purchase to whoever buys this one. The camera's not picking it up so nicely, but the blue is a very, very deep, rich royal blue that almost looks like the peacock blue of the embroidered flower on the cover. So I'm just going to slip this onto the wrap before I tuck it under for whoever buys it. And now I'd like to show you quickly what you'll get if you order the digital printables. So it comes with 4 pages that I've laid out of these Victorian scrapbook items, including the fussy cut girl with her kittens, the little I love you kitty card, and the little girl with the kitty here with her pretty floppy spring hat, all the different hands holding flower baskets, plus this one that you can either use just as it is or cut it the way I kind of described to make that layered Victorian card. The 2 beautiful kind of midnight or dusky looking ship scenes sailing in the sea with the flowers. I printed them, or I kind of laid them out in the print so they'll be easy to cut and turn into an instant book cover. You just have to fold it and maybe ink up that white line there so it doesn't look too starkly white. But this would make such a cool nautical themed mini book cover. So yeah, I tried to lay it out in a way that it could be just as easy as print it, cut it, and use it. But you can also separate them the way I've used them in this book here. The little he loves me a little, he loves me not at all angels. Super, super cute. One of the sweetest things Kenley has said was when he saw the sad little crying angel that says he loves me not at all, is that he loves all the little angels. And that's how I feel about them too. So I think we'll end it with that one. Okay, on this page here, you can just kind of see how the off-white kind of almost like a very, very, very faint beige background for this postcard with our Gilded Age looking lady here. Maybe post-Gilded Age, maybe more pre-Raphaelite era with her flowing fabrics. But yeah, this one, I made the mistake of laughing at the saying on this card because I thought it was like a Victorian way of insulting your neighbor if you think they have a stupid son, but somebody told me it's actually a Bible quote, so I won't laugh at that anymore. But it says, "A foolish son is a grief to his father." I'm not so into the patriarchal, biblical narrative, so I would probably fussy cut this out using an X-Acto knife and use it like a frame for something else. But to those who are into it, they might like to use it as a Bible quote. And then I made 3 variations of the little birdie holding the strings. So there's one that's a little bit larger, and then 2 little ones here. And then of course our Romanesque lady with her bluebird of happiness. And then last but not least, and I just noticed now that the side of the egg is cut off here, so I'm going to reformat this before I upload the files to Etsy, so it will be perfect, don't worry. But we have the two vases that I love to use with the torn edge and the gold paint as kitsungi, the flower basket, and this cool little like Easter egg looking business card for a diamond and fine jewelry dealer. So yeah, you get these 4 pages arranged as I've arranged them, except that I'm going to fix that. But I've also included in the digital printable kit the PNGs of each of these, which means you don't have to use them just how I've designed them. You'll have each individual cut out Victorian image and Victorian card and postcard, so that if you'd rather print, for example, just a full sheet of these or a giant print of this or just a set of those, you could totally do it. You can also use them as I've designed them, but instead of printing at full size, which these are on American letter size paper or 8.5 by 11 paper, you could also print them, say at 50% the size if you're making a mini book, or 70% or 80%. Just play around with the sizes. If you don't do this already, I love to play around with the sizes of my printables because it changes the whole feeling of the book, whether the image is blown up and spilling off the page or shrunk down in miniature. It can be a lot of fun. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this flip through. If you buy the book, I hope you love writing in it or just having it as part of your collection as much as I enjoyed making it. If you order the digitals, I hope you, well, I know if you order the digitals that you will have hours and hours of crafty fun playing with them. But thank you so much for watching my video. Thank you in advance to everyone who likes, comments, and subscribes. That really helps me and all small YouTubers out there like me to make it past the algorithm gatekeepers and actually get seen on this platform. So thank you, thank you, thank you to all those who do. So much love and happy crafting till next time. Bye for now.